So, welcome to Shivali. I'm from Bolt Digital team and Hannah, our head of production, and we're going to be talking about a project that we've just run with the Inkey list, which is one of the world's fastest growing, or is it the UK or the world's fastest, one of the fastest growing beauty brands. Who's heard of a brand called the Inkey list? Who buys Inkey list products? Oh, cool, brilliant. Great. Okay, so just to summarise, I think a lot of you in the room know about Bolt Digital, who we are and what we do, but there's a few ways in which Bolt Digital works with brands through these products. First of all, our strategy lab products, which are consultancy and market research projects, our accelerator and client-side ad operations, which is testing brand scalability and managing their campaigns, and finally our playbook, which is where we train in-house teams. And we're going to be talking today about our playbook process, which enables us to train and up-level in-house teams of brands that are growing and scaling fast. So we showed this tube map at the beginning of the day, and it's a graphic about how complicated the direct-to-consumer channel is. And the bottom line is, if you're trying to grow and scale a direct-to-consumer channel with an in-house team, then you need an in-house team who are capable of doing all of this stuff, which is quite a lot of skills. Someone was talking about team earlier, I can't remember who. I think it was Boris, I don't know where Boris has gone yet. Boris was saying how he always learned everything himself first before bringing on a team because of the fact it is complicated. And he wanted to know whether or not his team were doing things correctly. So another thing that we've become really well known for at Bolt Digital is taking that really complicated tube map, and when we're talking to our clients, whether that's our agency clients or teams that going through training, is basically simplifying everything down to what we call the 3 key levers, which is quite a simplistic way of looking at things: cost of acquisition, average order value, and lifetime value. But it really helps the brands that we're working with and the teams that we're training to think about things in this sort of way. Rather than thinking about all the different things they could be doing, they start thinking about, okay, what are we doing on acquisition, what are we doing on AOV, and what are we doing on lifetime value? So there's a lot of words on this slide, and these are just some of the challenges that when we meet brands that they're facing themselves, whether they have an in-house team or are looking for agency support. These will be some of the typical challenges they face. So it will be, how do they know that their team is keeping up with direct-to-consumer challenges and changes? How do they stay on top of latest best practice? I mean, it is one of the sort of frustrating facts of this industry that things change all the time across digital channels. It's like you learn and you get to grips with it, and then it changes, so you're operating in a space in which the rug's constantly being pulled out from underneath you. How can they fine-tune the work of their ad operations team? Are their media buying team good or not good, and how do they know what their media buying team are like? How can they keep up with market advances in tech and data? You know, Dan, who's our head of performance, is key to us keeping up with market advances in tech and data. He absolutely loves it. How do they come up with better ideas, and how do they produce creators at scale? How do they report? How do they measure KPIs? And how do they motivate their team? And how do they know that they're doing it right? So if you're a brand, you've probably faced one or more of these questions. In fact, and we have a Slido interaction, so it would be great to hear from you now if you can just answer, if you have got an in-house team or even as a brand, what are some of the challenges that you've faced with your team? We'll just give you a minute to answer this question. Or even with the businesses and some of the challenges you face in growing it. Leslie, are you answering this question? I know, Leslie, answer the question. Here we are, scaling. Did I need to press them? They start coming up. Here we are, retention, building an engaged community. Rising digital marketing costs, not making money. Hiring, hiring's really tough for this channel. There's a lot of demand and brands recruiting in this channel, and, the talent that you need, and it takes years to learn. So mining insight from data, lack of skills, attribution. I mean, everybody has a problem with attribution, so I don't know who said that, but you're not alone. Getting good creative without big cost, that is a big problem, and also producing creative, having the skills to produce creative. Scope, marketing outside of Facebook ads. So these are some of the common problems which we've highlighted, and certainly the specialist, who said specialist versus generalist debate? Oh, Charlotte, right, we can pick that up. That's one of my favourite topics. Brilliant. Building a team with enough experience for what next, but close enough to the hustle. Yeah, exactly. Bad agencies. Who said that? Scanning the room. No one is willing to admit to it. Right. Have you heard of the Inkey list? Is our next question. We've got lots of, so we already know this. We could actually skip this question, actually, I think, because we're not tight on time. So this is a brand called the Inkey list, who are actually only about 3 years old, but are well on their way to 100 million in revenue. They've grown incredibly fast. They've hit a viral minimalist trend, which is ingredients-led product and this type of packaging. Oh, you can see the packaging there, that sort of black and white packaging, which has been really popular over the past 3 years, but also their real speciality has been their focus on ingredients and layering of products. So the playbook that we run is a knowledge transfer process where we basically take, because as an agency, we have what a lot of brands need, which is a very capable ad operations team, capable of media buying across multiple channels, Facebook, Instagram, Google, TikTok, Pinterest, etc., and a very fast creative production team, as well as data expertise and reporting expertise and understanding how a D2C team should operate. So our playbook is a knowledge transfer process in which we take everything that we know at Bolt Digital and implant it, not actually surgically, but implant it into the in-house teams at a brand. So the Inkey list has been a project which is just reaching completion. And we're going to run through some of the things we taught them, starting with creative. So Hannah is our head of production. She runs an incredible production every month of between 60 and 120 assets that we're producing for brands we work with. So Hannah, just coming to you, what problems do we see brands facing when it comes to production and creative ideation?
Yes. Hello, can you guys hear me? Hello, I'm Hannah. So we see that a lot of in-house brands struggle with consolidating feedback and speeding through the process of signing off creative. So then, some creatives might take 2 or 3 months, whereas we get sign off very quickly, so 1 to 2 weeks. And our creative team is so talented; they are absolute machines. Agnieszka, who's in front of us, actually,
Aggie is a machine.
She is a machine. She can produce like 20 creatives sometimes a day. So I just wanted to give her a little shout out because we cannot run this without her. But yeah, most of the time it's this process of taking too long and going through too many people. And so what we do is train their teams on how to consolidate the feedback, go through this ideation process, how to brief the creative teams, and then get the sign-off much quicker because that allows for more flexibility for test and trial.
And what about ideas? Because another thing we see is the in-house teams are very rigid in their thinking when it comes to storytelling through the funnel or taking anything that's not, here's our product, buy it, as an idea for a creative.
Yeah, definitely. So we have over 30 plus ad formats that we use in Bolt, and this has worked for us. So we'll take a look at the brand, and usually the storytelling process, the founder story, for example, works so well because you get to really know the brand and the founders and why they started in the first place. And I think that emotional connection with the consumer and the brand really helps to convert. But yeah, mainly it's just working through the flexibility of your creative team because a lot of brands are scared to test and trial. You can be a bit rigid with your brand identity and you're scared to go out and experiment a little bit, but I think you should definitely test it and experiment, and that's what D2C is all about. So here are some of our ad formats. We didn't want to give everything away, but these are probably the most successful ones we've used with Inkey List, for example. The brand story and the founder story works really well. The mega grid showcasing, your community and showcasing what they're saying, how they're feeling, how they're communicating with the product and using the product, I think is a really great way to showcase the people who absolutely love your brand. So here are some of the ad formats that work extremely well.
And it's a very good illustration of a brand who wouldn't have the right assets. So for instance, when it came to the founder story for this brand, because they're not thinking in the way of like layering up stories and storytelling for a funnel, they wouldn't necessarily have assets. But thanks to Sally at the CEW, by chance the Bolt team had been filming at the CEW Achiever Awards and Beauty Awards, and we'd captured this footage of the Inkey List two brand founders, not knowing we were going to be working with them, which meant that when they came and didn't have any founder footage or anything natural. We just by chance happened to have those as raw assets, which was really good. And those are now live in their campaigns and on email as well. So moving on to the performance team. So what are some of the pain points we see, Shiv, with performance teams and what they do know and what they don't know?
Well, it's a hard question because performance by nature is ever changing. So I think it starts with the fact that they're hired in a data-driven process. Normally, teams are hired for their numerical ability. So some of the things that Hannah and the team in teaching them is quite new to them, i.e. layering storytelling across the funnel. So that's kind of a key challenge, is really first understanding the funnel setup, how that's segmented so that there's accurate reporting of, new customer acquisition, say, versus retention, and how that splits up across top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, all the things that everyone kind of talks about when they talk about performance marketing. So that's one key struggle in terms of getting a typically numerical person into more of a creative mindset where they can start envisioning journeys like the one on the board. And then I think that there's kind of a siloed effect of the performance team where they get the assets, say, from a brand team, and, the more creative side tends to work from marketing, and then they come into this and they, see performance on a week-by-week basis and then start to think, oh my God, we've had this really bad week. That's because something didn't resonate, or, not really understanding that from an agency perspective, we're seeing trends across clients. So we understand, say, a few weeks ago where we had a bank holiday where people had a higher propensity to
Well, it was
shop.
hot. It was the first
Yeah,
hot bank
basically
holiday.
it was hot. And everyone was out getting drunk and no one was shopping online. So pretty much everyone saw bad results that weekend. So stuff like that, I think, can really help in terms of us giving the ability to zoom out. And
I think another thing about performance teams that we see, or I see quite commonly, is that they'll have ad operations staff who are managing quite a lot of money on behalf of a brand, but actually are quite inexperienced. They might have 7 months or a year's experience in the market and have never worked either with a brand whose product sells really well or a brand whose products are really difficult to sell. So they're actually very inexperienced against the amount of money they might be being asked to manage, compared to an agency team, whether that's a Bolt Digital team or any other team, where we've got, all these years of all this experience across so many different brands, dozens and dozens and dozens, that you can just look at things and actually know with more confidence than in-house teams. So I think we often see in-house teams who are quite, not with the Inkey list, but just historically we've seen in-house teams who are quite browbeaten and low because they don't have the experience to sort of know whether things are right or wrong, and they can become quite low because the performance team, anyone working on the front end of the brand, is typically being seen as responsible for revenue for that brand when they could be quite young and relatively quite inexperienced.
And I also think, Tash, that's a great point in terms of that experience. It is a new sector. There's not necessarily anyone with 20 years experience.
Yeah, there's no one with
within
20.
it.
Right, yeah.
So it's also kind of understanding that the skill set is being upskilled and there's not as many senior people in the roles anyway to then hire.
Yeah. So also working on the Inkey list, we took them through email training. So Shiv, do you just want to walk through some of the general things that we talked about to all the brands in Playbooks about email?
Of course. So we went through kind of two different separate systems where we went through the performance and the creative. So you'll see here, ultimately, email is about driving revenue, whether it's new customer acquisition, but mostly it's focused on retention. And then it's about how do you transfer the amazing work that the creative teams into really engaging pieces of content and diversity within that content pieces as well. I mean, it's been touched on quite a few times, but brands tend to be quite product focused. And really, when you're a consumer, if you're even thinking about your journey to purchase, you're thinking about what the brand values, how they represent themselves, and wider things around that. So then we just went through best practice across that, so email do's and don'ts across both the performance and the creative level. And then finally, we looked at the lifetime value analysis and did our own work with the team in terms of how do we get that repurchase rate up so that things like rising CPAs and external factors that we can't control can be mitigated.
So what happens to a brand as they go through the playbook? I mean, first of all, can I say the Inkey list is one of the most successful beauty brands they are, so it's not like their team was in a disaster place zone. However, as they've gone through the playbook, these are some of the outcomes we've seen. So without doubt, there's improved storytelling across the funnel. Everyone at the brand, whether they're on the brand team or the founders, can feel confident that their messages are being told and all their stories are now being told. They've got a more effective and efficient D2C team, reduced siloed working. In the instance of this playbook, we've also reviewed their other media agency and helped them understand how that agency could be reporting better to them and how to manage and drive better results from that agency. Their data and tech stacks were upgraded. They've got improved modelling and growth reporting. And that has led to a 43% increase in revenue from email, 23% increase in ROAS from Facebook, and a 55% reduction in days between repurchase. So some pretty significant results as a result of the up-leveling of the in-house team and taking them from where they were, into a much more effective place. So we are around. You can always come and talk to us. This is me, that's Shiv, there's Dan, that's Hannah. So thanks, guys, for joining us. And come and talk to us if you're interested in hearing more about any of those things.